Hello everyone. In this video we're going to be covering a number of different tools. We're going to cover the Combine tool, Bevel Edge, Merge, and Multi-Cut tools. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we have in our model here the correct topology we need to combine this entire shape into one model. Now, in order to do that, we have most of it really set well, but not all of it. So there's parts in here, such as the bottom of this face will not line up well with the top edges of this handle. Again, also, same one with this one. We're going to make sure that we get this to have the correct topology in order so that we can easily merge the vertices and make it one solid object, if that makes sense yet. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to the easy parts, and what that is I'm going to combine this handle with this base of the bottom of the sword. So one of the first things I like to do is when we are going through our attribute editor earlier and we are giving these objects and we are setting the subdivisions primarily in the axis region, we set these to 8. Now this should make it very easy because we set our sphere here to 8, our cylinder here to 8, and then this actually started out as a cube. So we're going to need to make some adjustments. But the subdivisions 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 is 8 around. So the easiest one to show you first is going to be this sphere combining with this handle. Now, one thing we want to do, I'm going to press Shift I, and the first thing with my handle selected, and if you want to exit isolation mode, you click off of your object and just press Shift I. So whichever objects you'd like selected and isolated in isolation mode here in our perspective view, and this could be whether it be your orthographic views, front, side, top, or any other camera angles you may have. We're going to first get rid of the faces we don't need anymore because we're going to be combining them, and we're going to make sure that these combine and merge into one object in order to create one solid object with correct topology. So I'm going to isolate my handle again, or the cylinder shape 1, polycylinder, P cylinder 1. So I'm going to Shift I and isolate that. What I'm going to do from here is go into my face mode, and I'm going to highlight and then unhighlight these faces. So the long way to do this is to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, click all of 8 of these faces. The other way is to highlight all of them and then deselect, and that's the fastest way to do it. There's so many different ways you can do these things. Another way is to, I'm going to select off, hover into the shape. Above the shape won't work as well because you're going to select faces on the bottom. So if you go inside of the shape, this is probably one of the more uncomfortable ways to select, but it is a very fast, effective way. Just go ahead and highlight these faces and you've got nothing to worry about because you're in isolation mode here. So we're going to go ahead and delete those faces. It doesn't matter how you select them, those are just a number of different ways you can do it. So then I'm going to do the same thing here, and that you notice I just deleted the bottom sets of faces. Now from this point I'm going to exit my isolation mode. I'm going to go ahead and go to my sphere, and from here I'm going to go to face, and I'm going to highlight these, just these 8 faces also, and I'm going to delete them. That's it. Now from here, this is where it might get a little tricky for us. I'm going to show you one way to do this. first I'll show you how to combine the objects, and then I'm going to show you a couple different ways we can merge vertices and make it one solid object. And then I'm going to show you how to check to make sure that it's actually merged properly and without any complications. So from here, I'm going to highlight, select one object, shift select my second object, and we're going to go over here. There's a little combine button here. You'll see it says combine the selected polygon objects into one single object to allow operations such as merges or face trims. Now the other way, we can go in here, edit mesh, or it's in this one's actually under just mesh, and you can just go ahead and click combine. So either way, doesn't matter how you do it, you get the same result either way. And you'll find that there is a million different ways to do things in the software that will give you the same end result. So for speed purposes, I just like to use here under the modeling tab, under the poly modeling sub tab, over here combine. Okay, now the easiest and fastest way when you're just learning to do this is going to be one at a time, at least the safest way. So I'm going to select one, and I'm going to match each vertex, if you haven't noticed, with the same correct vertex here. So I'll select one and shift select the second one. And then what I'm going to do from this point is I'm going to hold shift, hold right click, merge vertices to center. So I'll do that, whoops, once this way, and then I'm just going to go around and undo. So you see what I'm doing. I'm just going ahead and combining these one at a time. Now this is the safest way to do it. And now I've got my base connected all as one solid object on my sword. And again, this saves us a lot of topology in the long run because we don't have the 8 faces here connected to our sphere, or the 8 faces here connected to our handle. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that, and I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do this. So that's the easiest, safest way to do it. Okay. And see if we have a merge vertices to center in here. I'm not positive if it's in here. No. Ooh. Excuse me. Alright, so now going back to a different way we can do this. This is an unsafe way, but a much faster way. Highlight all your vertices that you need, hold shift, right click, go to merge vertices, and then we're going to go to merge vertices, but we're going to select the little square. And this threshold operation here that you see, it's set at 0.0100. Now if you have a lot of vertices that are really close to one another, they all might just automatically merge right away to each other. And you'll see I hit merge and nothing happened. So I'm going to go ahead and see if we can do this again. And let's go 0.1. Let's try apply and close. And you'll see that that did it right there. It merged them all perfectly, and it worked really, really well. Not always the case. Messing around with that distance threshold can make all the difference, and sometimes it goes to second, third, fourth decimal places, depending on how close they are. Now, that's the other way. And then I'm going to go ahead and press 3, and you'll see by pressing 3 we enter smooth mode. 4 is wireframe, 5 is shaded, and if I go back to 1, it goes to the original format of our shape. 2 gives you a smooth display with our original mesh shape, but that's also in wireframe, as you can see. So I'm just going to go back to 1, and then the last way to do this, and this is probably the most complicated way to do it, but if you have a really complicated shape, this is easily the best way to do it, because vertices might be difficult to weld together so easily. If there's any twist in the verts, and they might merge to incorrect vertices, so on and so forth. So another way to do this, and the best way as far as by hand to do this, is to actually press W, your move tool, just select one vertex at a time, and let's just pretend you didn't want any of these vertices to move at all. This is where you wanted these to weld to. So I'm going to go ahead and press W, hold V, and you'll notice up here you'll get this snapping, just like when we held, if you hold X, it snaps the grid, moves the selected item to the nearest grid point when we have the grid on. V snaps to vertice, and there's other snapping icons up here. And a lot of times students will make the mistake by accidentally clicking something on the keyboard and turning on one of these snapping tools, and then all of a sudden their vertices or whatever they're moving is just snapping to certain points and parts, and they can't figure out why. And this is why, these icons right here. So if that starts happening to you, make sure you check these icons. Now back to our mesh here. I'm going to hold V, and I'm just going to snap it to where I want it. I'm going to do that for all of these. And I'm holding middle mouse button, and I'm just going ahead and snapping these directly to that vert. And you'll see it snaps right to it. I could snap it over here if I wanted, over here, over here. It's just snapping to whatever vert I'm pointing it to. So we're going to go here, and then we'll go here, and the last one is here. Now, don't get mistaken that these vertices are not welded. So if I go ahead and press 3, even though they're the same object, we combine the object, they're not welded. I'm going to go ahead and show you. Welded or merged in this case. Welded is a term used in 3ds Max, Autodesk 3ds Max. And merged is a term used in Autodesk Maya. They're both counterparts of the same Autodesk company, two separate modeling software. So we are using Maya, and from here I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of these, and I'm going to show you what happens when I merge these. Merge vertices, merge vertices. You'll see that happens. When it does that, you know you have a safe, closed object. Having a closed object is very important. So that's one. Those are 3 different ways to merge vertices. Now, going back here, I'm going to select my Edge tool, and this is a really neat tool. It can be sometimes it doesn't work correctly, and in which case I'm going to show you another way to do the same type of operation using a different tool. But this is a really cool tool. I'm going to double click this edge. It's going to go ahead and highlight this entire edge loop. This is called an edge loop. And if I double click it, as long as the closed object, all the vertices are merged, it will select them all around in a sequential order, circulating the mesh. So you'll see it's all highlighted in that orange, and from here I can hold Shift. Holding Shift and right click will bring up all of our different types of tools. Specifically, whether I have a face selected, it'll give me face tools that I can work with. Vertice, it'll give me vertice tools I can work with. And in this case we're working with edges, it'll be edge tools. So in Bevel Edge, if I go ahead and just do Bevel Edge, it gives you these different options. And this is really neat because, and the same options are over here. This is actually, over here has more options, but these are our most commonly used tools. So I'm going to bring my segments to 2. Ooh. I'm going to bring my, come on, not my fraction. Well, I'll do it over here. For whatever reason it's being difficult. And I'll bring my fraction to the thing is, with your fraction, the object, if I press 3, the closer it is, the harder this edge will be. And the more segments we have, the harder this edge will be. Things like that become a lot more important when bringing into sort of a sculpting software such as Autodesk Mudbox or ZBrush to maintain these hard edges. We call it, give me 1 second, hard poly surface modeling. So let's go, I think 0.2 is okay, and this offset we can also, it doesn't seem to be doing much, so I'm just going to leave it at 0.2. And segments 2, and you'll see how that gets that harder edge. If I make it 4, you'll see it gets a lot tighter in here, and as you subdivide it more, it'll maintain that hard crease much better. But we're keeping our segments low. We don't need all that extra topology because the model and mesh itself becomes much more difficult to work with if we need to make further modifications to it. So I'm going to keep it at 2, my fraction's at 1, and that's really all we need for this. Okay, and that's our bevel tool. Now, if for whatever reason it's not working for you, I'm just going to go ahead and undo my bevel tool. If for whatever reason that's not working for you, okay, let me just make sure the mesh is all one solid object. There's another tool, and we're going to get into this a little bit further in detail here in a second, but there's this, make sure your object is selected. Over here we have something called the multi-cut tool. You can probably find it, multi-cut tool, Control-Shift-X. It's a wonderful tool. It's actually changed quite a bit. There used to be 3-4 different cut tools in the software. Now they've actually combined it all into one, and they made it really super easy to use. In which case, I'm going to go ahead and select it. And with my object, you'll see it starts snapping, which is nice. So let's just pretend I'm going to show you one example for once. You can make custom cuts into your geometry. Typically, you always want to go vertice to vertice. Sometimes not, but in this case, I'm just going to show you one way, because in one of our first videos, I spoke to you about triangles and how the software reads triangles. So that's one way to custom cut in your geometry. You can also, let's just say I want to go around here and do some hands-on sort of custom cut throughout my entire mesh. I can do it this way too. And then when it said close here, which I already clicked on, and then I press enter, it makes that cut, and that cut's finalized. Now let me go ahead and undo it one more time. If I hold Control, you'll notice it gives me this really evenly distributed edge loop, and I can just go ahead and click once here, and then I can click once over here, and it pretty much creates that bevel I was going for in the beginning. So both ways are totally fine to do. It's just something I wanted to show you because it's a really common practice to have sort of a harder edge surface wrapped around parts of objects such as this one. Now, getting back to this, in my object here, I want to make sure that there's another way to subdivide faces. And I showed you the multi-cut tool, and I showed you how to custom cut using it, and also how to hold Control and equally subdivide it that way. One other way is I'm going to click on one face, hold Shift, and double click this very next face. It'll highlight all of these faces that I need. Another way we can select these faces, right here, click drag right down the center, and I highlight all the same faces. So what this does is it selects just like the edge. When we selected the edge loops, it's going to select the faces all in that subdivision section. So now I showed you how to create the using our hold Shift and right click, our edge tools, our vertice tools. Now we're going to use our custom face tools. So in our face tools, I'm going to go down to add divisions to faces, and I'm going to click the little square. And instead of doing exponentially add divisions, we're going to go to linearly. From this point, honestly, I don't know if it's going to be run under U or V, but I'll try V or U first. And obviously that didn't work. I have all this extra geometry with no correct edge loops because they're not connected here, so I'm just going to undo that. Now I'm going to bring this one back to 1, undo being Control Z. I'm going to bring this one to 2. Now I'm going to hit apply. And you'll see that that runs a perfectly straight edge loop around the faces that we just currently had selected. I'm going to do the same thing on these faces. I'm going to hit apply. You'll notice that the U and V will switch because they're running in different directions. So in this case, this one needs to be 2, and this one needs to be 1. And I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And now we have some of our geometry that we're going to need in order to start to subdivide our shape here. Now, if I isolate this handle now, you'll notice that this is still open because we deleted it before. And now, from here, I think it just works a little bit better visually if I select these faces. And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and use my Extrude Tool, as we just learned in the previous lab. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press R again, and I'm going to just middle mouse button inward, and you're going to see that extrude inward. Now with those current faces selected, those current faces, just like the top of the handle and the bottom of the handle that we didn't need, we deleted. So from this point I can just go ahead and delete. Now, this particular section is a better spot to use our vertex snap as we just showed you. So I would actually say, before I do that, I'm going to go into this view, and you'll notice that these do not have the same height. So one way, you don't always have to snap vertice to vertice in the fact that it's one vertice snapping to another vertice. You can highlight an entire row of verts, and holding shift middle mouse button click and V, we can snap to other vertices, and you'll see it's just snapping to different heights. So I'm going to snap to this one, and you'll see it should be perfectly equal with these. Now, that being said, I'm going to snap each one of these vertices to the corresponding vertice on the object. Now the other way, like I showed you before, whatever way is easiest for you, you can combine these objects, and just like before, I could take this vertice and this vertice, merge vertices, and merge to center. In which case, I want it to, I don't mind if you do it that way, because we're all learning, but I'm going to just go ahead and show you one more time the snapping trick, because this is probably the most difficult way to do it. And I'm just snapping to the corresponding vertice that needs to be snapped to. And from here, now you see I snapped all of those verts, but if I press 3, you'll notice that it doesn't have that sort of smooth hinged look, I guess, to it. And what we need to do is we need to get all of these vertices here. I'm highlighting both sets, merge vertices and merge vertices. You'll see it combines it to the handle. And I use smooth mode, which is 3 on the keyboard, to show you that it is merged successfully. And that is our handle now. So now our base handle is all combined. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to combine the sword blade to the sword base, I guess we'll call it. And from here, before I actually do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bevel this edge. And I'm going to run my check tool here, segments 2, and let's just go ahead and apply. And I don't like that distance. Let's try 0.2 and apply. So I just went into the bevel options. It's the same over here. It doesn't matter how you do it. It's just another way to bring up options that you are able to use when using this tool. It's really weird how they do it. There's the channel box, there's the bevel options, the little square that we click over here. Oop. If I select an edge, the little square we can click, that brings up our options, and then again, let's undo that. Bevel edge. If I just go to bevel edge, it brings up its own little pop-up window of options you can use. So this one is new. This is always here in the channel box, and I guess you could say the old-fashioned way to do it is to go into the options here. So anyway, go to bevel edge, fraction to segments 2, and fraction, let's go 0.1, and that should do that. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to show you how to later easily subdivide this so it has a much higher poly count. And in today's 3D modeling world, I guess you could say, the video games we see or VR, simulations that we see, or AutoCAD or whatever, everything has different sort of poly counts. Video games being some of the highest poly counts I can think of now with the Xbox One and PS4. PC, obviously, given a game that's built and designed for PC, will have in the options tons of different settings you can adjust to make it a much higher quality game. That would be another example. And so on and so forth. If it's something for low poly, you would keep it at this, but we build everything for low poly. As low poly as it can be while maintaining shape, because it's much easier to add polygons than it is to take away. So, and it is much easier to add polygons than it is to subtract them. So I'm going to go ahead and just do this really quickly, and as you see, all I did, let me just go ahead and go back and explain. I'm going to highlight my faces, and then I'm going to extrude them in, and I'm using the scale tool, and I'm just bringing it in slightly, and then I already know I don't need these faces here, just like before, and I'm going to delete it. Now in this object, I'm going to Shift I so I can easily swoop under, and I'm going to select these 4 faces. Oops. Make sure you select the correct faces and then delete. Okay, now from here I'm going to do the same thing. I want this blade to actually stay in the same point. You can combine these objects like so. Okay. And you can merge vertices to center. But I do want you to try this technique at least once, and I would like you to try each technique at least once, actually. But this one most importantly, because this is a much more precise way to keep geometry where it is and bring geometry closer to it. And it might take a little bit longer, but it's worth it when you get into really complicated models. Alright, so now you see I have that all there, nicely set, combined, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight these vertices, making sure I don't have any other ones selected. If I press 3, I can check. I know it's not merged yet. merge vertices, and you'll see now I have my sword all as one solid object. And from this point, I'm also going to go ahead in here, and I could use my multi-cut tool, I could use my bevel tool just to show you again. I can bring this in and just sort of custom cut in my I don't think that one did. Custom cut in my shape. So there we go. And I'm going to zoom out. And just to show you, if I press 3, it now has that hard edge, hard surface modeling that I'm going for, because I don't want this to sort of smooth into it. I mean, maybe in some cases I do, but given my reference, I don't think I do. And obviously it's just concept art. I don't expect it to look identical or exact. It's not. That's not the point of the modeling exercises I've been showing you. It's to learn the tools. But I do want you to have it visually represent a sword of this type. You can change, you can modify the model itself, but I want it to look like a sword. Okay, so that's our sword up to this point. That covers our combine, merge vertices, bevel edge, and multi-cut tools, and also another way to custom subdivide your mesh. So those are all of our little techniques I'm going to show you in this lab, and I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for the next one, and thanks for watching.